Today's episode, we are going to cover Michael Jackson's last recorded album called Invincible. The 77-minute-long project had features from Notorious Big, Carlos Santana, and Slash from Guns N' Roses. Today, it still stands as the most expensive album ever to be recorded at $30 million. But the question is, did it come at the expense of the generation's biggest superstar? With relentless scrutiny from the media.
But don't get the wrong idea here. Michael Jackson is a homosexual pedophile.
Is it true you even have inflatable children? Two. And I notice you have tape up here so that you don't leave any fingerprints on the kid.
An unprecedented war with the record label that he half owned in publishing.
Is this the property of Sony? Is this the property of whatever record company he was working with at the time? Is this the property of the Jackson Family Trust? At the moment, it's still the property of Sony.
We are going to examine the timeline of polarizing events of the Invincible era. How could Michael Jackson go from a phenom to having the most expensive flop? This is Defunct. It is October 1997. The world is still reeling from the untimely deaths of Notorious B.I.G. and Princess Diana. A kid named Kevin Garnett, who plays forward for the Minnesota Timberwolves, just receives a 6-year, $123 million extension. Not bad for a kid who just graduated high school 2 years prior. And you start to hear rumors and whispers about Leonardo DiCaprio in a movie that he's on a boat or something like that. And Michael Jackson is just coming off History's World Tour, which grossed $165 million, making it the highest grossing solo concert tour of the 1990s. The album has sold over 20 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling albums of all time and one of the best-selling multi-disc albums of all time. You Are Not Alone, written and produced by R. Kelly, which eventually becomes his last #1 hit ever. Feeling the success of History, the album, and the tour, Michael wastes no time to start Invincible. But the recording is a little bit unusual. Something that normally takes Michael a year or two to work on suddenly spans over the next 4 years. And because of this, many deemed Invincible to be Michael's comeback album. 4 years have gone by, and suddenly it's September of 2001. It also marks the 30th year anniversary of Michael Jackson as a solo entertainer. And how do you celebrate this? On a stage at Madison Square Garden. It's 2 concerts helping him celebrate this phenomenal benchmark in his career. With the 2 concerts, one being on September 7th and the one being on September 10th. The show was edited from footage of 2 live performances, and it was watched by 30 million viewers when it aired later that same year. With tributes and performances by Usher, Luther Vandross, Whitney Houston, and Destiny's Child, just to name a few. But the 2 things to note here is it will actually be the only time that Michael Jackson will perform any material off of the Invincible album live. And unfortunately, nobody knew what was to happen.
Good Morning America was in progress in the East Coast and the Midwest, but we're joined by the entire network just to show you some pictures.
The next day, September 11th, commonly known as 9/11, were 4 coordinated suicide terrorist attacks carried out by the militant Islamic extremist network Al-Qaeda against the United States. Deeply affected, a benefit concert led by Michael Jackson was held on October 21st, 2001, called United We Stand. What more can I give? The event was plagued with problems reportedly, such as guests didn't show up, faulty sound equipment, and the concessionaires running out of food and beverages. 9 days later, Invincible is released. Shortly thereafter, a dispute would come out between Jackson and his record label, Sony Music Entertainment. Michael had expected his licenses to the masters of his albums to revert to him in the early 2000s, after which he would be able to promote his material however he pleased and keep the profits. But the clauses in the contract set the revert date back years into the future. Michael wanted an early exit from his contract. And the promotional tour of Invincible had been slated for November 13, 2001, all the way to October 8, 2002. They had 96 concert dates in the span of a year. Michael, due to the contract dispute, refused to go on tour. And this is when all hell breaks loose. Fast forward to January 9th, 2002, Michael won his 22nd American Music Award for Artist of the Century. Later that year, an anonymous surrogate mother gives birth to his third child, Prince Michael Jackson II, better known as Blanket. See, the dispute, if I can speculate, is Michael really started caring about the business after he had children. And this was in between his last album, History, and the new album, Invincible. It didn't just come out of nowhere. He wanted to secure the future for his family and children. April 24th, 2002, Michael performed at the Apollo Theater. The concert was a political fundraiser for the Democrat National Committee and former President Bill Clinton. Money would be collected to encourage citizens to vote. The note here from the April 24th, 2002 concert is, it was one of Michael's final on-stage performances before his death. Disgruntled, mad at what speculated to be bad business practice, Michael goes and takes the stage in London. And he explains,
So I'm leaving Sony a free agent, owning half of Sony. So I own half of Sony's publishing and I'm leaving them, and they're very angry at me because of it. But I just did good business, you know. But so the way they get revenge is to try and destroy my album.
July 2002, Michael called Sony Music Chairman Mariah's ex-husband, Tommy Mottola, a racist and very, very, very devilish, and someone who exploits black artists for his own gain. He did it at Al Sharpton's National Action Network, located in Harlem. Michael's accusation prompted Al to form a coalition investigating whether Mottola was exploiting black artists. But what's so funny here, the next day, Al Sharpton goes to the newspaper and said he believes that Tommy is not a racist, erasing all of what he and Michael did the day before, which was interesting. I have known Tommy for 15 or 20 years, and I never once known him to say or do anything that would be considered racist. Sony responded with a statement calling Michael's comments ludicrous, spiteful, and hurtful. And it seems particularly bizarre that he has chosen to launch an unwarranted and ugly attack on an executive who has championed his career for many, many years. On January 10th, 2003, Tommy Mottola, the head of Sony Music at the time, calls it quits. He said he was stepping down. His run was more than a decade, but the news came at a time when the record industry and Sony in particular were in financial turmoil. Invincible, in my opinion, was one of Michael's most underrated work, with songs like Heaven Can Wait and Butterflies are timeless classics. It was Jackson's first full-length album in 6 years, and the last album of original material he released in his lifetime. It debuted at number 1 in 13 countries and went on to sell 8 million copies, receiving a double platinum certification in the United States. A lot of Michael's team producers said that Michael must have felt dead for 10 years by the way he was treated. Do you feel the same?